Thank you. I don't usually title my speeches. I've never done that before, but I'm going to title this one. They asked me to talk about food freedom, but I can't help talking about guns. I'm an equal opportunity freedom fighter, okay? So I'm titling this one, Guns, Butter, and More Guns, okay? Now, it's not a treatise on macroeconomics. We have any people in here that like to study economics? Micro, macro? Well, I'm not very well equipped to talk about macroeconomics. I'm sorry to let you down. In 1991, I took macroeconomics in college, and I walked in there, and there was this upstart young professor. His name was Paul Krugman. 3 days a week for a full semester, I had to show up to his class and listen to that drivel. He didn't make sense then, and he doesn't make sense now. So let's start with guns. I'm from Kentucky. We always talk about guns. When we do political fundraisers, we actually shoot guns because that brings people out. So I had a fundraiser actually last week. It was Friday. And this was to raise money for good candidates at the state level. And of course, I got my kids out of school. I said, hey kids, you want to miss school to go shoot guns? They're like, yeah, that's a good dad. So they came with me, and we're shooting these sporting clays. You know, they throw them out there 2 at a time, and you shoot them with a shotgun. Well, of course, at these fundraisers, it's mostly politicians and lobbyists. But what I discovered is my 12-year-old son is a natural with a shotgun. He was just knocking these things out of the air. I was so proud of him. I looked at the scorecard. He was ahead of everybody. And I got my phone out, and I texted my wife right there from the shooting range. I said, honey, Justin is out shooting the politicians and lobbyists. But she texted back, OMG. I hope not like Dick Cheney. I swear to God, that's a true story. But I got a better true story, and this is about fighting for gun rights in the nation's capital. You see, when the Founding Fathers set up our country, they decided that Washington, D.C., the capital city, shouldn't belong to any state. So they left all the legislative matters for Washington, D.C. up to Congress. And some people argue, they say, well, this is local rule. Congress shouldn't butt into the D.C. City Council. The problem is the D.C. City Council is the worst at violating the rights of their citizens. So I think it's more than appropriate for us to follow the Constitution and legislate for D.C. And what I realized is they have the worst gun laws in the country. Now, it also happens they have one of the highest murder rates in the country, okay? Those kind of go together, gun control and murder, because the only people that have guns are the bad guys. So I realized we had an appropriations bill that was going to fund Washington, D.C., and I had an opportunity to offer an amendment. So my amendment said, it seemed pretty simple to me, that none of the funds shall be used to enforce any gun control in Washington, D.C., except for federal gun laws. Well, I went to the floor. I was all excited. I dropped this amendment in the hopper. I got up there to debate it. They raised a point of order, the Democrats did, and they said my amendment was out of order. And I was devastated. What had I done wrong? And they told the parliamentarian and the speaker in the chair, they said, well, his bill requires the D.C. gun police to understand federal law. And I said, what's wrong with that? Well, I guess it was a new requirement for police in Washington, D.C. that didn't exist right now. They're not required to know federal law. So the chair ruled against me. He ruled with the Democrats. He said, yep, your amendment is out of order. Well, I was devastated. And I remembered a discussion Justin and Mosh and I had on the floor one day. We were saying, well, what do you do when the chair rules your bill out of order? What's the next thing you can do? And he said, I think it's called appeal the ruling of the chair. So I said, I appeal the ruling of the chair. I should have said, help, help, I'm being repressed. But instead I said, I appeal the ruling of the chair. And the whole place went silent. The parliamentarian, I really like him. His name's Thomas, too, and he's got real thick glasses like me. He got giddy. He got excited. They hadn't seen anybody do that in 20 years. And my own party rushed up to me to the microphone and they said, "You realize what you just did?" I said, "No, but you could tell me." "I think I've got a good negotiating position now by the looks on your face." And they said, we just told everybody 2 hours ago they could go home and go to bed or eat their dinner. There were no more votes tonight. This requires a vote. And I thought, that's going to make me real popular. Who knows what these Congress critters are doing at this hour? They certainly weren't watching me on C-SPAN. So they said, "Well, what do you want to do?" So I started cutting deals, and I said, "Well, I want to make sure I can resubmit this amendment and have another chance." And so I let it die on a voice vote. And so things were back to normal. And a Democrat who from D.C., I will not mention her name, it's not good form, the gentle lady from D.C., she issued a press release and said I had been humiliated on the floor. I wasn't humiliated, I was excited. I shut it down for 10 minutes. Like, I've only been here a year and I shut this place down for 10 minutes. So she said I was humiliated on the floor, so I resubmitted it without the allowance that they know what federal laws are. And what I just wrote was none of this money will be used to enforce any of their gun laws. And I named all 4 of them specifically, which are all unconstitutional. You see, in 2008, that was the Heller decision, had to do with Washington, D.C. And they ruled that the gun control in Washington, D.C. was unconstitutional. So ever since then, the city council's been passing more unconstitutional gun laws. And so a lot of this hadn't been tested yet. Anyways, I'll speed up here. I resubmitted the amendment. The next day, we debated it. The same Democrats were debating against me. And when the camera was on the Democrats, their staff came over to the Republican staff, whispered in their ear. The Republican staff came over and whispered in my ear while the C-SPAN camera wasn't on me and said, "The Democrats are willing to let this pass on a voice vote." And I said, "Thank them for their offer and politely decline." I want everybody on record. I want to know, are you for the Second Amendment or are you against it? Because I've been here a year and a half and I haven't got to vote on this yet. I don't know who my friends are. So we had a vote on it and it passed, and I got 20 Democrats to vote for it. So the DC folks went apoplectic. They held a press conference. They were going to, deride me and the bill and say how horrible we were and how many lives I was going to cost. Of course, it was going to save lives. But so they had the Brady campaign, the mayor of D.C., the police chief, assistant police chief, and the delegate from D.C. They held a press conference to hate on me. So what did I do? I went and sat in the front row. And then halfway through the press conference, I had to go vote, and the cameras followed me out. So anyways, that's guns. Now I'll go back to butter. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about food freedom, because I farm back in Kentucky, and this is important to me. I'm all for food safety. In fact, I want food to be safer than it is now. Here's the problem. The USDA, that's the USDA, the USDA implements all these laws and regulations, and the FDA too. These organizations are making food less safe with their regulations. So let me give you an example of that. In Europe, it's illegal to sell an egg that's been washed. And if you go buy one in the store, it's not in the refrigerator. Now, why is that? Because nature solved this problem millions of years ago. When a chicken lays an egg, it puts an antimicrobial film on the egg that keeps it from rotting. These eggs have to keep for a long time for a chicken to hatch out of them. But what do we do in this country? The USDA says you have to wash it. So you take off that protective coating. Now it has to be refrigerated. And when you take it out of the refrigerator and it's in your car on the way home, it sweats. And then that makes it easier for bacteria to get into the egg. So anyways, that's just an example of some of the the ways, and the reason they want to refrigerate it is to protect you against salmonella. So instead of ridding salmonella from our chickens and our eggs, we're producing chickens and eggs with salmonella and then trying to refrigerate it so you don't eat too much salmonella. So anyways, that's an example of where the laws are kind of backwards. Another example that I like, and this is where I have some legislation on, is raw milk. Okay. I can't stand here and tell you, guarantee that it's safer for you, or that it's better for you, or it's healthier, or that it would cure this, or it would cure that. But I can stand here and tell you, you have the right to decide what goes in your body. And this should be left at the state level. The federal government should not be butting their nose into this. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they have the right to regulate milk. It's been with us for centuries, raw milk has. Okay, so Ron Paul had a raw milk bill before me. It's a great bill. I reintroduced it, but I thought, how do we make one of these bills just like idiot-proof, okay? Where the common sense just hits you in the face and you gotta be a co-sponsor. Which is hard to do with congressmen. They're moving targets for common sense. But so what I introduced a bill that says if one state is okay with their citizens drinking, buying, selling, raising raw milk, and another state is okay with it, then the federal government has no business if you take milk from state A to state B. And so that's the bill that I introduced, and I'm sure glad I got a lot of co-sponsors before I dropped the bill in the hopper. Because I dropped the bill in the hopper with like 24 co-sponsors, and it's still stuck at 24, and I'll tell you why. I dropped it in the hopper, and I did a press release on it, and the next day, the milk lobby came on me like a tornado, okay, a hurricane, whatever. They were all over me. They said I was going to be responsible for kids dying and, this, that, and the other thing. I mean, it was horrible, these press releases they put out. Now think about this. It's the milk lobby, and they're trying to tell you their product's going to kill you. That's not, I think it's time to look for a different lobbyist. But my wife was worried too. I mean, I'm stuck up here, she's down there, but she gets Google alerts. And when the Google alerts came out and said I was going to be killing people with raw milk, she was worried. So she texted me again, and she said, I had no idea that the lactose lobby would be so intolerant. So there are a couple other quick food freedom things I want to talk about. I raise beef on my farm. We have chickens just for ourselves and ducks for eggs and whatnot. But we raise beef for other people. I mean, it's going into the food supply. Sometimes we sell them at the stockyards. They go out west. They get fed corn. And, you probably may have eaten some of my beef in a steakhouse or in a hamburger somewhere. But I like to sell it locally to people, to neighbors and people that I know. And when I sell it to them, it's been grass-fed. There's no hormones, no antibiotics. But here's another problem with the USDA. They want it to be inspected. Now, mind you, they never test it. They never test it for E. coli or anything. They just look at it and smell it. Smells good, looks good, ship it. But the packing houses that are nearby me, there's one 3 miles away, he can't provide an office and a bathroom and all this stuff you have to have for the USDA inspector. The overhead's too high. It takes a much bigger company to do that. So if I want to sell the beef to somebody else without selling them the cow first, there's sort of a loophole you can go through. I have to take my cattle over 100 miles away and then try and get it back before it thaws after it's been processed. But listen to this. If I want to process my beef and take it to a Little League game and cook hamburgers on a grill and feed it to little kids, that's legal, as long as I don't charge them anything. So this goes to tell you it's not about food safety. These laws are not about food safety. It's about money. You're probably on the mailing list for Campaign for Liberty and whatnot, so I won't go into hemp too much. But I have an industrial hemp farming bill. It's rope, not dope. But Justin Amash calls it a gateway vote. So we don't know where this is going to end up. But anyways, we got that passed as an amendment on a bill. The president signed it into law. And this year, for the first time in like 70 years, they're growing industrial hemp in Kentucky. So that's pretty exciting for me. All right, so the butter part was the raw milk, okay? So I've done guns and butter. Now I'm going to go back to guns again. But these guns, by the way, when he was talking about the problem with assault weapons being amassed, I thought he was talking about my basement. But I'm going to talk about other weapons. The guns going to the Free Syrian Army, or, you know, actually, we've been giving them guns already. The CIA does this. This whole vote was about getting Congress's hands dirty. There was deniability until yesterday, okay? But now there's no deniability, and everybody in Congress that voted for that is culpable. Now, the victory that we won, the Liberty congressmen that are going to talk to you tonight, the victory that we won is that we got a separate vote on it in the House. They didn't get a separate vote on it in the Senate, but we got a separate vote on it in the House because we said it's immoral to attach war to a spending bill, to say that if you don't vote for war, you're going to shut down the government. So we got our separate vote in the House, and I'm thankful we did. We had 71 Republicans vote against getting involved in a civil war on the other side of the globe, where the country that's being overthrown hasn't shown any aggression toward our country. We had 71 Republicans vote against that, some not for the right reasons. Some wanted to nuke them till they glow, but and then there were 85 Democrats that voted against it. So that was our small victory that we had. But if I want to talk to you about the president's speech. Has anybody in here read 1984? So you know what doublespeak is. The president is the master of doublespeak. I guarantee you, he goes back and they flip through that book and they look for more doublespeak. And Congressman Jim Jordan, who's also a good defender of liberty, won't be here tonight. But he said to me, he said, you know what, I listened to that speech and it's full of contradictions. Let's start with the first one. The president, the first contradiction was he said, ISIL is not Islamic. Okay? That's doublespeak. He said he doesn't need congressional approval to do what he's doing, but Congress should give him approval. That's doublespeak if you ask me. He said no boots will be on the ground, but we're sending 475 specialist consultants, advisors. We know what those are. And then finally, he said this will be with a broad coalition of allies. But anybody that presents a threat to the United States, we will go it alone and, you know, and there is no broad coalition of allies. So I don't know how he gets away with this, but he contradicts himself, and he's a master of doublespeak. So don't fall for it. If you were here, now just to finish up, and I'll play off of one of the questions, because I'm not going to take questions because we have lots of other great speakers lined up. But one of the other questions that somebody asked was, where were you when Eric Cantor lost? Well, I can tell you where I was a week after Eric Cantor lost. I was down there with Dave Bratt. And I was trying to deliver the inoculation for Potomac fever because we can't afford to let the Dave Bratts come and get bitten by the zombies, right? None of these guys speaking here tonight are zombies. We're like the guys in the RV driving around trying to escape the zombies. But here's what I want to leave you with. There is a lot of hope. A lot of times we stop bad bills before they ever come to the floor. Have you heard? There's the speaker, there's the leader. What's the third position in leadership? Whip. You got it. What's the whip do? The whip counts the votes so there are no surprises when the C-SPAN camera comes on. They want to know how the vote's going to turn out. And what we've done is to stop a lot of bad votes before they come to the floor by convincing the whip he's not going to have the votes to get the bad bill passed. So. And we've got some good guys coming that have won their primaries. Nobody's paying attention to this. The Liberty Caucus that Justin took over from Ron Paul is growing, and it's going to grow bigger. I have high hopes for these guys, and if you can help them out in any way, please do. Jody Heiss is down in Georgia. Alex Mooney is in West Virginia. Barry Loudermilk is in Georgia. I believe Dave Bratt, of course you all know, from Virginia. Gary Palmer is in Alabama. And most of all, if you guys can help out Clint Didier in Washington State, please do it. Because we need reinforcements if we're going to protect liberty. Thank you very much.